Alright you guys, what's up? It's Maddie back at it again for a travel day video. So basically the situation is this. I was gonna film my flight from Tulsa to Chicago, but when I got to the gate they were already boarding, so I was like, oh. So anyway, so I'm in Chicago O'Hare to Paris CDG. Things are a little sketchy today. Basically so my visa's expired, but there's an extension because of COVID, but there's nothing on my visa that says it. So I have a paper, which is always sketchy. And then I also need a COVID test, and it needs to be a specific type of COVID test. Mine doesn't say that type. It only says a rapid, but I know it's that type because I asked the company. I'm not gonna rattle on too much, but basically to get back into France, you have to have all of these. You need a COVID test basically. And today's just gonna be a sketchy day, but I'm here super early, so I'm just gonna kind of relax and try to get something to eat, and yeah, just let you guys know how it goes, because I just watched another video from a fellow French YouTuber, the Francophile. They're a couple and they made me feel so much better. I'll link their video down below about their process, and they said that the people in the US and France barely looked at their COVID tests, so I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Another empty airport though for sure, but also this is the international terminal and there's literally no food. There's only Burger King. Also, I've flown out of that gate one time. Aer Lingus, shout out. I got an Impossible Whopper because I'm a vegetarian. Okay, update. Okay, so I just called up to the desk to do my passport and COVID check, and it was so easy. She literally just looked at my test and just saw that it was a negative. So on the US side, this is the second time that I'm hearing that yes, get the PCR test and get like the correct test, but I don't think you need to be so concerned about it saying, mine doesn't say PCR, so don't freak out about that. But on this end, it's been really easy for them to check my COVID test and my passport check, and they haven't said anything about my expired visa yet, so I think it's smooth sailing so far. So like, don't stress out. Last night I was having a meltdown. I was like crying to Khalil, and I was like, I'm not gonna get anything. So like, don't let other people dissuade you. Just stick to the information, guys, okay? Okay, Maddie here for a very quick, another little voiceover. So nothing really new to report. Same Air France flight. The only thing was they made me change my mask. I guess it wasn't the right type of mask, but there's the form again. Another pretty good meal. No complaints, pretty good. They did offer me a glass of champagne, so I was quite pleased with that. But pretty much after dinner, I just settled in again. There was really bad turbulence on this flight, so I was quite nervous. So of course, I decided to just, pop open the wine again. Why not? Even though I keep saying I need to stop drinking it on flights because it makes me feel bad. Anyway, so once again, this is one of my favorite parts of the flight. We start getting close, especially on night flights. When the sun starts to rise, you can kind of start to see the horizon and the clouds. That makes me feel a lot better, and then we got there, so yeah. Okay, so I made it back. I will report more about the passport check and the COVID check when I get home, but Khalil like always comes and meets me at the airport when I fly in from the US, so, and this time was no exception. Okay, greetings my humans. So I did make it back. It's currently 10:30 at night. I got home at like 10:30 in the morning, and I basically slept like all day, and then I woke up and took a little walk, and now I'm having a coffee because I am literally so tired, and I just feel like if I fall asleep now, I'm gonna wake up like 2 in the morning and my whole kind of day tomorrow will be shot. So I think the reason why I'm so tired too is I'm like a really nervous flyer. I need to like figure that out. But I'm a nervous flyer, and there was really bad turbulence. Like the like the fasten seatbelt sign was on for literally like 3 hours. Like I watched like 2 movies. Literally the plane was just like shaking so much, and so I was like really nervous. I didn't sleep at all on the plane. Usually I at least fall asleep like a little bit, but I didn't sleep at all, so I'm just really tired. But I do want to debrief you about the whole like entering the passport, the COVID test, because I think this information is going to be really helpful for people that are like visiting family, you know, la la la. So I am going to unpack a little bit, and I will debrief you more tomorrow morning when I'm like feeling alive and like a normal human. Okay, good morning, you guys. How is it going? As I promised, I'm back to kind of like because I feel like yesterday I was like I just didn't do a good job of explaining everything. So okay, so I went home to the United States to go to my dad's retirement because he retired after 31 years of flying for Southwest Airlines. And so originally I was not going to go because visa centers in the United States were not open. They were not renewing visas for my type. So my fear was that I was going to go to the United States and then I was going to get stuck in the United States if they didn't reopen visa centers. 2 days before the day I was supposed to go, I get an email and they're reopening visa centers. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. So instead of renewing my visa in France, I'll just go home and get a new visa. It'll be so easy. I'll be home anyway for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's a perfect time. Like, it'll just be so much less, like once again, it's a long story, but it'll just be so much less stressful. So I go home and I never receive my official contract. When you have a contract in France, it needs to be stamped by a certain like governance in order for it to be official. So I have my contract, but the official version still hasn't come in yet. And you have to have that in order to go to your visa appointment. So that was like a whole stress. So that was my number one stress is, okay, so another thing, hard to explain, but okay, so basically visas in France were extended for 6 months because of COVID. So technically my visa expired in May, but because of COVID, it now expires in November. I was afraid I was going to come back and they were going to be like, your visa's, like, I just thought it wouldn't be in the system. My second worry was about the COVID test. Okay, so in order to return to France, it says you needed a PCR COVID test, which is basically a molecular test from what I understand. You need a PCR within 72 hours of your flight leaving. So it's nearly impossible to get that unless because they're not really rapid testing unless you have symptoms, you've been exposed, things like that, especially so you can use your insurance to pay for it. Because there are services. There was one place I ended up finding called Passport Health, and I guess they are doing PCR testing for travel. Because that was another thing is I called a couple places and they're like, oh, we're not doing PCR testing for travel. Okay, so basically I ended up finding a place. I ended up getting the COVID test, got it back, but on my paper, on my results, it didn't say PCR test anywhere. All it said was COVID rapid test negative. So the night before the flight, I wish that Khalil was here so he could tell you about it, but I was having like a breakdown. Like I was like looking at all these things online and I was like, they're not gonna let me in. Cause like for one, the COVID test, two, the passport thing. So I get to the airport, I was flying out of Chicago O'Hare, and they called me up to the desk, like, Madison Schultz, please come to the desk. And they're like, oh, we need to see your passport and we need to see the COVID test. And I was like, okay, here is the moment of truth. So I hand them my COVID test and she's like, okay, great. And she's like, oh, where is it from? And I was like, oh, here we go. And she's like, oh no, I'm just, I'm looking because people are always asking me because they're so stressed. And I was like, okay, cool. And then she asked for my passport. She looks at it and she's like, oh, it's for work, right? And I was like, yeah. She's like, yeah, just make sure you have, you know, like your contract just in case, you know, whatever. Just make sure you have all the things you need with you whenever you arrive in France, which was great because I have this like huge folder with all my documents, you know, whatever. Yeah, so okay, so I arrive in France. We land. I'm like super tired and just like exhausted from like being so stressed about the turbulence. If you have any tips about overcoming flight anxiety, please let me know. I know that is so ironic because my dad was a pilot for so many years, but I don't know why I get so nervous. I think I just get really bad anxiety and I get really nervous about most things, which is, you can see is kind of a theme here. So anyways, so we get to the airport and I'm like, once again, like, okay, here's like the second test, you know, whatever. So the first thing you go through is they ask for a COVID test, but they had a little section for if you didn't have a COVID test. Like they had COVID testing at the airport and there's 2 lines. One is for with test, one is without. So they check it and all they did was, okay, so I had all these papers and she was like looking at it and they're in English, obviously, so I was like, oh, like maybe it's more simple here, like look here, and it says like COVID test negative, and she was like, okay, great. Like that was it. There's no like this is the main thing I wanted to say. There's no emphasis on it saying PCR. So get your PCR test, get the test you need, but worry more about the negative results. But the thing is too is you need to be careful because you never know when you're gonna get like the one guy who's really strict. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so they see your COVID test and then they put a white sticker on your passport, basically saying like, okay, you are negative COVID. You can come into the country. And I got my test just 1 day before also, so that was good. Also, even though like it is really stressful, it is good because it gives you a lot of peace of mind about, first of all, pretty much everyone on the plane should be negative. Like, and also just coming back. And if, for example, I'm coming back and I'm living with Khalil, it gives you a lot of peace of mind as far as like being around people when you get back. Where was I? So they give you a white dot to go on your passport and then you go through passport check. And this is the next part where I was like really sweating. So like I go through passport check and I give him my passport and I'm like, I have my papers ready, like my my renewal appointment, the little paper that says all visas have been extended, and he scans my passport and he doesn't look at my visa or anything. And then he's like, oh, your COVID test. So I give him my COVID test and he's like, okay, great. And then he that's it. Like he doesn't ask me about my expired visa. So it must just be in the system now, like automatically renewed. I don't know. But when he didn't look at my visa, I was like, what? Like so much stress for nothing. Then there's another guy sitting there and he's like, oh, let me see your passport. And he looks at the dot on your passport to make sure, so like double check that you've gotten that COVID test. So ultimately, I was so stressed for nothing. I think if you've done what you need to do, if you are in the right place at the right time, or like if you know that you have gone through the proper channels, like it's okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how that went, coming back through the country, coming back through France with the COVID test and everything. But today it's honestly, it's super nice. So today is September 21st and I don't start school until October 1st. So this kind of gives me a lot of time to like get organized, clean, like maybe find some tutoring gigs and just like kind of, you know, settle in before school starts. But today I think I'm gonna go out and enjoy the beautiful weather because it's so nice out. So yeah, so maybe I'll take you guys on like a little walk with me, but I just wanted to tell you about that. Yeah, so I'll see you guys maybe outside. Okay, I'm really sorry. That little talking segment was already 10 minutes, but I just briefly wanted to also reiterate that if you're ever in a Facebook group and people are asking for advice or asking, like, I was getting so mad the other days because I was asking advice in like these Facebook groups and people kept saying like, oh, it has to be this, oh, I heard. And I just feel like, especially on issues on like immigration and visas and, you know, like traveling, if you don't actually know the information, please don't offer up your opinion. Like for me now, I'm gonna write something in the group like about my experience. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I heard, you know, because like hearsay is not very helpful. Like I guess maybe I should have specified this, but I was looking for actual people's experience. Like what is the actual system at the airport, because people kept being like, it has to be a PCR test because there's, you know, false negatives. And I was like, it is a PCR test, it just doesn't say it. So I was like, my question is, does it have to say PCR? I don't know, it's just very annoying. So I just wanted to like briefly say that again. Like, I just feel like there's a lot of people offering up their help and advice and stuff, and like without actually having the information or without actually knowing it. So anyway, okay, yeah, that's just what I wanted to say. Alright guys, so I've made it to my little reading spot. I'm a little on edge because I've seen a couple of rats here before. Just cute Paris things, you know. But anyways, so I'm gonna go ahead and stop it here. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other questions about the visa process or the COVID test, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Toodles.